relative to the dossier?
I never personally received dossier information. The FBI in mid-September, the first time I am aware of the FBI having that information, the first time I saw it was in mid-September. My understanding was that came into the FBI. That's when I became aware of it and when I first read it.
One more time. Just say it. Bruce Orr gave the FBI documents relating to and supporting or part of the dossier. Is that accurate?
Mr. Orr gave the FBI documents which included material that I believe originated from Mr. Steele.
Bam.
Thank you.
The gentleman may briefly answer the question that the gentleman felt he didn't have an opportunity to answer with Mr. Walker.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I wanted to address, when you bring up an integrity issue, and it's interesting, you and the gentleman from Texas raised this in a way that almost, approaches, it is insulting.
The gentleman may answer that question.
If you're going to make an
So what I'm going to respond to is what I'm saying. I am here under oath. I am not lying. I have never lied under oath, and I never will. And so the insinuation, not even the insinuation, the direct comment that you somehow say you have an integrity issue is insulting. I take offense. It is incorrect. Nothing I have
never
said here
mentioned
today.
your personal life. I just simply said the amount of time that you were spending on the taxpayer's dollar, wasting it when you were supposed to be doing your job, texting back and forth to the court, is a problem.
And so what I'm saying is,
and the gentleman has already answered that question. So now the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Raskin, is recognized for 5 minutes.
So we have more than 2,500 kids in America who are separated from their families, no hearings from judiciary or oversight. We got thousands of people who've been slain in gun violence from Parkland to Las Vegas to San Bernardino County. No hearings on the universal background check favored by 97% of the people. The president has plunged us into trade wars. He's insulting and taunting our democratic allies around the world. He's flattering autocrats and kleptocrats and dictators around the world. And he's done nothing to stop another round of cyber sabotage of our elections coming in 2018. But our colleagues don't want to do any hearings on any of the chaos that's been set loose in the land. No, Mr. Strzok, the GOP wants to talk about your personal texts, 2 or 3 out of more than 50,000 that we've seen. And the purpose, of course, is to derail and discredit the investigation by the special counsel that has obtained 19 indictments and 5 criminal convictions of people like Flynn and Gates and Papadopoulos and so on. And when their names come up, you'll notice that our colleagues maintain a discreet and demure silence on the other side of the aisle. But they're outspoken about this. They say, Mr. Strzok, that you are at the heart of a deep state conspiracy to oppose Donald Trump. To make this claim, they've got to ignore the fact that you were an equal opportunity insulter of politicians. You had choice negative words for Democrats and independents, like Bernie Sanders, who you called an idiot, like Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton and Martin O'Malley, who you called a freak show. That's not very nice, but hey, there's a First Amendment here in America, and you can still insult government officials without being thrown into jail or held in contempt of Congress, at least by our side of the aisle. There are no kings here, and we have freedom of speech, the right that is cherished by the people and feared only by tyrants. But my colleagues have insisted on making a conspiracy theory out of your pillow talk texts. But there are a couple of facts they can't get around. Number one, the IG found no partisan bias affecting the official investigation. Number two, Attorney General Sessions is a Republican appointed by Donald Trump. Rod Rosenstein is a Republican appointed by Donald Trump. James Comey is a Republican appointed by Donald Trump. FBI Director Wray is a Republican appointed by Donald Trump. And Robert Mueller is a lifelong Republican. So this would have to be a Republican conspiracy. So I'm looking for evidence of the Republican conspiracy, and all I could find were the kind of statements that you've been arraigned on today. So I want to ask you about those statements. In the spring of 2016, Senator Ted Cruz called Donald Trump a, quote, sniveling coward, a pathological liar, and a serial philanderer. Was this attack on Trump by Senator Ted Cruz a coordinated part of a deep state conspiracy that you organized?
No.
On August 8th, 2016, Senator Marco Rubio said Donald Trump was, quote, unworthy of being our president. Was this attack part of a deep state conspiracy that you organized?
No.
In October of 2016, Speaker Paul Ryan said, I am not going to defend Donald Trump, not now, not in the future. Was this fleeting outburst of moral courage part of a deep state conspiracy that you organized?
No.
Former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson called Donald Trump a moron. Former EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt said he's an empty vessel when it comes to the Constitution. Steve Bannon said he's like an 11-year-old child. General H.R. McMaster referred to Donald Trump reportedly as a dope and an idiot with the intelligence of a kindergartner. Karl Rove called him a complete idiot. Representative Duncan Hunter said he's an a-hole, but he's our a-hole. And the director of the National Economic Council, Gary Cohn, reportedly sent out an email describing Trump as an idiot surrounded by clowns. Were all of these vituperative, negative characterizations of Donald Trump part of a deep state GOP conspiracy engineered by you and your friends?
No.
Were any of these statements part of a conspiracy you organized?
No.
Now, although this conspiracy does appear to be overwhelmingly Republican, if it exists, balance compels me to ask you about my hero, Bruce Springsteen. Unlike the others who are all Republicans, Springsteen's a Democrat, and he said, "The Republic is under siege by a moron." Did you tell him to say that?
No.
Was it part of a deep state conspiracy to criticize the president?
No.
Mr. Strzok, this hearing has been a circus and a kangaroo court run in banana Republican fashion. And I believe that some of my colleagues have disgraced themselves today in their attack on the FBI and the justice system of America. How can we recover from the hole that has been dug here today?
Sir, America is strong. I have, however bad I think I've seen it in my life, I am confident that the institutions, the American people, will endure and be great. I have full faith in the United States, all the men and women, and even in times of trial and tribulation, I have every confidence that we will emerge as great as we've ever been. And that
well, I'm with you, and thank you for your service to America.
Yes, sir.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Gates, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've said repeatedly today that you were not biased, but Bob Mueller kicked you off his team as a consequence of your bias, didn't he?
Sir, I wouldn't agree with that characterization. I think I answered earlier. My understanding was that, and again, there were no words spoken about this, but it was the potential appearance that he wanted to avoid as much as anything else.
So did Bob Mueller say, "I'm not firing you from this team from your bias, I'm getting rid of you"? So what is your basis for the belief that it's the appearance of your bias rather than your actual bias that resulted in Mueller removing you?
Because I think his experience both with me, my work, and the reputation of others about me and my work, that so he knows that I am an individual who follows the facts where they lay.
So your testimony today that you were removed not for bias but for the appearance of bias is based on your perception of Robert Mueller's perception of you?
No, sir. I'm saying what I would think the logical case. If you want to know what his reasons were, you need to ask him.
Let me ask it simply, Mr. Strzok. Did Robert Mueller ever ask you if you were biased against Donald Trump?
He did not.
So he didn't ask you when he hired you?
No, that question is not typically a question that gets asked during hiring meetings in the U.S. government, to my experience.
One would seemingly think that if you were hiring someone to investigate something, you might ask. But certainly then, when you were removed, was it clear to you that Mr. Mueller was aware of these incendiary text messages?
Yes.
So he knew of the text messages, but never asked you whether you were biased or not?
That's correct.
Your girlfriend texted you on the 8th of August, "Trump's not ever going to be president, right? Right?" Do you recall your reply?
I do recall my reply, and if I hadn't, it's been refreshing my recollection no less than 4 or 5 times today, sir. But yes, I do recall my reply.
And what was it?
I'm sure you have it. I don't want to misstate it, but essentially, no, he's not. We'll stop it.
Did Bob Mueller ever ask you about that text message?
He did not.
About a week later, on August 15th, you sent a text message regarding a meeting in Andy McCabe's office. Is that right?
I don't know the date. I do believe I know the text message that you're going to.
Did Bob Mueller ever ask you what happened in the meeting in Andrew McCabe's office?
There are many meetings that I attended in, not many, but several meetings.
Did Bob Mueller ask you about any of them?
He did not.
Huh. Did Bob Mueller ask you what you meant by an insurance policy?
Director Mueller did not.
On the 26th of July, this is contemporaneous with the opening of the Trump-Russia investigation, your girlfriend texts you, "Clinton just has to win now." And you reply a few days later, "And damn, this feels momentous, because this matters. The other one did too, but that was to ensure we didn't F something up. This matters because this matters. So super glad to be on this voyage with you. Did Bob Mueller ask you why this matters?
If you're asking why it mattered, it was a comparison between a case about...
I've seen you do this where you answer questions that are not asked, but that is not what I'm asking you. I want to know if Bob Mueller asked you about this text message.
Director Mueller did not ask me about any text message, Congressman.
Well, gosh, just days after Mueller is appointed, in 2 text messages, one on the 19th of May and one on the 22nd of May, you reference impeachment. Did Bob Mueller ask you why you were referencing impeachment?
Congressman, as I just stated, Director Mueller did not ask me about any text message.
Well, I find that very interesting, that Bob Mueller has to remove you as a consequence of bias. Now, you don't say it's bias. You say that based on your perception of Bob Mueller's perception of you, it couldn't possibly be your bias. It has to be the appearance of bias. But when we get into actually the manifestation of that bias through your words, Bob Mueller doesn't ask you about a single one of them. And so then I look at other people that Bob Mueller picked on his team, people like Lisa Page. I'm very curious to know whether or not he asked her about any of her incendiary text messages. But throughout the team, you've got people working for Bob Mueller who have active connections to Hillary Clinton. Greg Anders donated to the Clinton campaign. Kyle Freeney donated to the Clinton campaign. Andrew Goldstein donated to the Clinton campaign. Elizabeth Prigolar donated to the Clinton campaign. James Quarles donated to the Clinton campaign. Jeannie Rhee represented Ben Rhodes during the Benghazi investigation. She represented the Clinton Foundation against Freedom of Information Act requests. Andrew Weissman, the number 2 for Mueller, attended Hillary Clinton's election night party. Aaron Zellaby represented Justin Cooper, who was the person who set up Hillary Clinton's private email server. And then there's you and Miss Page. And it's just really interesting to me that when you were so damaging to the investigation that you had to go, that Bob Mueller, the person who brought in all these people that had connections to the Hillary Clinton campaign, did not ask you about a single text message. And I tend to believe, Mr. Chairman, that it's because he did not want to know the answer and that there was bias and that your perception of Bob Mueller's perception of you is totally unreliable, and I yield back.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Demings, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Strzok, let me just clear this up right now. I am not angry, and I'm not desperate, and I'm not afraid of the truth, but I am in pursuit of it. First of all, I want to thank you for your service to our country through the Federal Bureau of Investigations and for your service to our country through the United States Army. Mr. Chairman, each of us as members of Congress took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. My oath as a member of Congress was not the first oath that I took, it was the third oath, for I served as a law enforcement officer for 27 years. And like the employees of the Federal Bureau of Investigations and the Department of Justice, I swore to protect this country and to remember, uphold the rule of law. We have now wasted countless hours of our very limited and precious time chasing these phantoms, wasting both the witnesses' time and our own. The Inspector General's report must have been a very big disappointment to the President and to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. Let me say this, law enforcement officers, and you said it earlier, Mr. Strzok, not only do they have political opinions, but they are encouraged to have them. And as a chief of police, I encourage them to have them and express them. Perhaps, but their expression never interfere with their ability to conduct their job. Perhaps Congress could learn something from members of the law enforcement community, because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle allow political bias to influence their judgment every day. And perhaps they should read, and all members of Congress should read, the ethics manual for Congress. The IG report said, and I quote, "We found no evidence that the conclusions by department prosecutors were affected by bias or other improper considerations," unquote. President Trump's and his enablers' conspiracy theory about the Department of Justice and the FBI have been investigated, and after hours today, they have still been debunked. The president's own campaign manager is currently sitting in jail, awaiting trial on multiple charges, and there is enough evidence, as we've already seen, that resulted in 5 guilty pleas. The truth hurts, but no